I'm Mark Moore. I'm a hypnotherapist based in Leicestershire. I also teach mindfulness meditation, which I practice as well. I do some counselling. I use a lot of something called NLP, which is Neuro Linguistic Programming, in the work that I do. And I also give talks to businesses, clubs, organisations that are designed to provoke thought and conversation about our mental health and well-being. Over on Facebook and Twitter, people have been talking about the different therapies and the fact that a lot of these are talking therapies and how talking works and how is it of value to us in terms of managing our anxieties, etc. And I think it's also people are asking about the tensions as they're forced to stay at home and spend time together and the change in dynamic that that's bringing. So today I just want to expand on that topic and maybe just look at a few things that will help you create and maintain useful dialogue in the way we talk and listen to each other. So you've probably been creating your routines for years. You go off to work in the morning, kids go off to school, we get home in the evening, we swap our stories about our day, and then we go off in our different directions. Then we're going to sit on the games console in the bedroom, catch up on the TV soaps, do some work emails, the usual stuff. But now we're all trapped under the same roof all day. So we're all trying to adjust, and we're probably all struggling a little bit just to process what's happening and create these new routines. And chances are a lot of the conversation is about coronavirus, lockdown, social distancing, and we're all seeing the figures come out each day of the tragic news of people that are suffering with infection, or even worse, people that have tragically lost their life. But I just want to rewind a moment, that term I used about being trapped under the same roof, because that's how some people are talking to me when I contact them online. They're using this word trapped, to be stuck or surrounded, imprisoned, entombed, if you like, locked off, cut off. So even the term lockdown conjures up a prison scene, if you like. It talks about our lack of freedom, this removal of our liberty, if you like. So often our use of language, the words we use and the words we hear, can have a huge impact on the images that we find of ourselves creating our mind. And that's also worth remembering when we speak to others, particularly children and family members. The words we use will create images and create a perception of what's happening around them. In my main occupation as a hypnotherapist, and I see this as a talking therapy, but it's one where I do most of the talking. That's generally only after I understand what issues a client's bringing and what they want help with, and also see what order of things they want to tackle things with. And I'll be talking specifically about hypnotherapy in a later video. Counselling and psychotherapy, people will tell you, are very much the same thing. I know some therapists out there will be reaching for the keyboard to email me, but for the sake of the audience, I think they are very much similar. So I will use the term counselling in the videos I do. Often when we talk about counselling and therapy, one of the classic names that come to mind is Sigmund Freud. And this conjures up images of a client sort of reclined on a couch, a very scholarly looking, serious gentleman, probably making lots of notes on a pad, and a process that can take months, even years. But Freud was very much, if you like, the grandfather of therapy. He brought us something called psychoanalysis and introduced us the concept of our ego. Bits about our life force, and also brought into regular use this term libido. And although it refers for him in terms of the life force, the energy that we create, it's not the sort of modern reference we use to refer to our sex drive. And Freud suggested that the issues that we encounter that give us trouble later in life often come through experiences that we have in younger years. And he introduced this idea that our conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg, but our unconscious mind is this far greater element sort of below the surface. Therefore, there's much more in our unconscious than there is in our conscious mind. And his field of therapy, if you like, split into psychoanalysis and something called psychodynamic therapy. And the first of these is a long-term approach, which can take still now several years, whereas the sort of psychodynamic therapy can take weeks or months. But since Freud, there have been lots of changes to therapy and approaches and lots of developments. Any sort of secondary school sort of psychology student will be familiar with names like Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow, Pavlov, Beck, etc. The commonality with all these names, all these processes, is speech and talking. Most therapies now are client-led, and the counsellor's role is very much about guiding the client with regards to what they want from therapy, the approach they want to take, and the outcomes or goals that they're trying to achieve. And these processes are sort of mapped out and reviewed and changed as the course of therapy goes on. One thing that a therapist doesn't do is sort of dispense a cure like a doctor. There's no magic pill, there's no silver bullet, if you like, but it's about just being non-judgmental. And within the confines of our ethical agreements and ethical terms, all those conversations are strictly confidential. But when we talk about conversations and the way we talk, I suppose the point here now is if you talk to your family, etc., if they're discussing certain issues, you often expect a certain reaction. But how much does the reaction you expect change the way that you make your point, you tell your story? Often something, not bad news as in sort of something tragic, but something you've done wrong. You may create a long story, a long scenario, simply come to the point that you've broke a dish or you've had an accident in the car, or whatever the case may be, rather than just come to the point. And the reaction we expect will often have a dramatic impact on the way we speak to people, because it's the outcome that we're expecting. The point of our communication is not to go with what we say. The point of our communication is what's the reaction that we're looking for. And I think very much most people know it works. We often rehearse 100 times in our head what we're going to say to someone. We tweak it each time. We're going through it again and again and again. And when we actually get in front of that person, something totally different often comes out of our mouth. We plan to go in all guns blazing, give somebody a piece of our mind, tell them what we think, and often we end up delivering a whimpering apology or feeling that actually we were in the wrong all the time. And I think it's worth remembering that even those well-rehearsed speeches will often fall apart. And often with many of those scenarios, you often feel then trapped in this sort of emotional cycle then, because you often walk away thinking, they don't understand me, I've not communicated it, and often we'll blame the other person without looking at maybe what we tried to say, and the fact that we often miss the point and don't communicate clearly what it is that we want to say. I think the harder the subject, or the bigger the perceived issue, if you like, the more difficult it can be for us to express what it is that we're trying to say. As I said a moment ago, we expect certain reactions, and the same goes when people talk to us. Your children will assume you will react in a certain way because certain information based on past experience, they will gauge your reaction will be the same. So you and your partner may have had an issue that you probably don't want to talk about because you think you know the reaction that you will get or that they will get. So we end up really addressing our concerns elsewhere. We moan about the kids to our spouse or our siblings sometimes. We talk about our partners to our best friends. We talk about our boss to our colleagues, and so on. So we often then wonder why nothing really changes. And we can be left with this sense of conflict that sometimes even a family member we just think doesn't see our perspective, doesn't see our point of view. I think a way to help deal with conflict, I think a very good exercise sometimes, if we feel we're just not getting the message through and we get this sense of we're just in a bad place with a person, there's a little thing I do in therapy with people where it's a simple bit of chair therapy, as I call it, the empty chair. And basically I place 3 chairs out in a therapy room, get the person to sit down. I say, just imagine, for example, it's your husband sitting facing you, and just tell him what the issue is, what you feel, what you think, what's really going through your mind and this frustration. And they will then deliver their tirade or their monologue, and they feel much better. But then we'll then ask them, invite them to say, well, go and sit in the other chair and put yourself in your husband's shoes. Now, this could be your husband, it could be your boss, it could be a colleague or a friend. But in this case, I'll use the example of the husband, and just be your husband. Sit like he would, use his sort of words, and you've heard what you've said. So responding now as your husband, how do you feel? Because you've heard the real emotion, you've heard what's really behind, what the worry is, etc. Respond. And having then got that response, I'll then put them in a third chair or just get them to stand away from that scenario and say, just imagine you are a bystander, you've heard this, both sides of the conversation, what do you think is going off? What advice would you give these people? And sometimes we can repeat this cycle 2 or 3 times as people just dig down into what the real issues are. It's a very good exercise sometimes, particularly where people don't always know what's frustrating them about someone. Just go through this exercise of putting yourself in their shoes, but also trying to see your perspective from their point of view as well. And I think a few more things that would help, particularly about trying to create time and space for conversation. I think we're past the time in life where families would sit around the dinner table for an hour discussing the issues that are affecting them, life and the family as a whole. So sometimes we need to create the time and the space. I think very importantly in the current situation and beyond is look for cues and look for clues that someone maybe needs or wants to talk. My rule is that often beneath every bad attitude that we experience from someone is simply just a want to be loved, simply somebody wanting to speak out about something. And beneath their anger and frustration is just some sort of wound that we need to, or they want to be healed and soothed. Create space and time to talk. Many people come to therapy just because it gives them both of those things, away from the everyday distractions. It just allows them just to get things off their chest and just to offload and dilute and share what's troubling them. Be patient when you're talking to people. I have clients who can spend long periods in total silence. And often they're just looking for the words that they haven't used for years, just trying to give a voice, just trying to articulate something that they've never had to give a voice to before. It can be something very difficult. And the silence itself can be a place of great healing sometimes, just giving people time to sit and think about what's troubling them. Don't try to be a mind reader. Never assume what someone's thinking when they have that moment of silence. Always ask, what's troubling you? What are you thinking? How does it make you feel? And just remember, our thoughts, our feelings are all intertwined. So how does the issue they describe make them feel? So it's not just about what's happening to them, how does it make them feel? What thoughts does it trigger? And when you do sit and talk, always try and bring those talks to a comfortable close, maybe just by set a time limit, because you both then need time to digest that conversation, what's been shared. We need to process, but not overload ourselves with it. And it's not all talking about bad stuff. So keep talking, whether it's good, pleasant, and unpleasant. And also, as we learn to talk, we also learn to develop our listening skills as well, because listening is a real skill. So it's vital through these times at the moment and beyond. I think we're all learning the skill of communication, having that frustration and finding someone to talk to, but it's something we need to carry forward with us for the rest of our lives. So if you're struggling right now, absolute advice is talk to someone. Talk to a friend, family member, someone you can trust. And in all those scenarios, if you feel it's something you need help with, then reach out and look for some professional help. It doesn't have to be years of counselling, sometimes 1 or 2 sessions, just to get some professional help and guidance and some advice can be all that you need. I'm available online. You can contact me on my website. There's help there for individuals and employers who need help with employee assistance programs. I'll continue to post videos on YouTube, just discussing what's trending around mental health, etc. over the coming weeks. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Hope this has been useful. And I hope in some small way it just helps make your tomorrow a little bit better than your yesterday. Thanks for listening. Speak to you soon. Goodbye.